Welcome back. I am making masks for cancer patients, friends of mine. Possibly if I have enough surplus, they'll be going to hospitals. But cancer patients, and I have several friends who are cancer patients, and I know what that feels like, need these too, not just the healthcare workers. And these are double-sided. They're made of cotton. They are non-surgical. They are not OSHA, FDA, World Health Organization, CDC regulatory face masks. These are homegrown face masks made out of quilting cotton, and it's just stuff that I had left over at my house after some projects. This fabric in particular was left over after I made an American flag quilt. So that's why a lot of what you're going to see in this little video is red, white, and blue. This one was the second prototype I made, and you can see there's like a little stiffness in the bridge of the nose. That's so that when you're wearing it, you can literally pinch that down and have less of a gap here and less fog on your glasses if you're a glasses wearer. So I don't have any more of these that are cut out. This video might be done in pieces, and the second part that I videotape may be done after I do this part, so I can show you the pattern and show you how I cut them out. Anyway, this is the second prototype. This was the first prototype, and this was before I watched a video on a suggestion on putting the piece of metal in the bridge of the nose. So this one does not have metal in the bridge of the nose. It's very comfortable. It will work quite well and be very comfortable if you did not have glasses to fog up. The way I sew these together, I top stitch. I'm deliberately showing you the one that has a contrasting color on one side so that you can see it. Some of them later I put red on one side and blue on the bobbin, and I got all fancy with it. But you can see where this is top stitched just to this point. Also, this seam only goes to that point. And there's a seam here and a top stitch seam here. And this little channel right here is where I will thread the elastic. Then when it has elastic on both sides, here and here, those elastic pieces will fit over the ears of the wearer. And I think that since these are kind of form-fitted, they'll be quite comfortable. Now there's another pattern out there floating around of a rectangular piece with pleats that naturally kind of forms to the nose and mouth when you put these earpieces over your ears or when you tie it. And those are actually way faster. This has a lot of stitching that goes into it. This seam is not necessary on the pleated ones. The top stitching seam that goes over that to lay the seam flat on the inside, that little top stitching seam, is not required on the pleated ones. The pleated ones are basically a rectangle. You turn it right side out, and then you fold the pleats, you stitch it down, and then when the wearer puts it on, the pleats expand. That pattern is floating out there. I'm sure there's like probably by now about 50 people on YouTube that have a video posted on how to do those. But these are actually washable. So theoretically you could go home and, wash this out with some hot water and some soap and put it in the dryer, and it would actually be crispy clean. None of these first round, I think there's 14 of those, none of those have the little bridge nose piece of metal. But I'm about to show you how I put the metal in the bridge piece. So here's one of them before I finish it off, before I turn it right side out. And you take these two pieces that have been sewn together. This one has flannel on the inside, which is a little bit thicker and offers a little bit more protection, but most of mine do not have flannel, because I also read that people won't wear these if they're too hot and too uncomfortable. And they provide absolutely zero protection if people aren't wearing them. So you get a little bit of protection or a lot of protection on something that people won't wear. And I'm in the LA area, and right now there's such a shortage. People are wearing bandanas, food pantries, food banks are wearing bandanas. Mayor Garcetti has requested that people wear bandanas if they don't have masks available. The LA Times recommended wearing a bandana. And a bandana is essentially quilting cloth, but a single layer. So these, at least these other ones I was showing you a minute ago, have 2 layers of fabric. So there's it's like a double layer bandana. So it allows a little bit more protection. And bandanas slip off your face. I've worn them. I know. These will go over your ears. They will be adjustable because I'll cut a piece of elastic. I'll loosely tie it. Then when the wearer receives their mask, they can adjust that, tie it tighter, or loosen it, and then tug on it until the knot is down in this channel, and then the knot won't be tucked behind their ears, bothering them. So this one is wrong side out. The right side of this fabric is way more attractive. Looks like that. But anyway, so you stitch these 2 pieces together, this one and this one, right sides together. You put the seam down the arched portion. Then you fold the seam in one direction and you top stitch that down. Now that's important because normally in sewing, you would open seam it and press it open. And you don't want to do that in this case because when you press something open, there's little gaps between every stitch mark. And those little gaps allow air in and would allow, in this case, germs or virus particles in. So you don't want to do that. You want to fold it completely over. You can see it's folded over. And then top stitch over that. So here's the original seam and here's the top stitch seam. And then you can see on the other side, it's folded in the other direction. So nowhere in the front of this mask is there an open seam that would, allow or permit extra particulates to get through. This actually right here, there's a little tiny bit of overlap. So right smack in the center of this, rather than it being a weakness, there's a little bit of added protection. So you don't have the seams going the same direction. You have them going, you overlap one direction, you overlap the other direction. Then when you flip this thing right side out, it allows for the seams to look like this. So you have a seam and it has a little top stitch on the edge there. And then on the other side, you have a seam and a top stitch. And if you look on the very top, it overlaps. Like here's the top stitch going one way, and on the other side, the top stitch is over on the other side going the other way. So there's nowhere in here are there seams where they would pull apart and allow air to get through easily. One end of this is left open, and I can show you that on this one right here. This side is stitched shut. This side is not, because that's where I'm going to turn it right side out. So I turn that right side out. I put the top stitching all the way around. But before I turn it right side out, I found out that I could add this little bit of metal in here. Now this one is pretty big because I actually used a doubled over pipe cleaner. But because I have a bunch of pipe cleaners. See a little stack of pipe cleaners right here. So anyway, I figured out that I don't need a double layer of pipe cleaner. I just needed a single layer, just enough metal to allow a little bit of pinch. So today I experimented with zigzagging a pipe cleaner in place, and I did that relatively easily. I bent the pipe cleaner in half and I positioned it right in the middle of the bridge of where the nose is. And then I pinned it with one pin because it's really hard to pin a pipe cleaner all the way down here. Then I zigzagged it in place, and I did not have any trouble with that. Pipe cleaners look bigger than they are because of all that fuzz. So anyway, I will turn this one right side out, and then I will add this. Oh, and you make sure that you add the pipe cleaner in the seam allowance. You don't go lower than your seam, because then it's not going to turn right side out easily and neatly. When you turn it, this metal it'll flip over, and this metal will be just inside that seam. So that's how that's going to work. That's what I did on this one, and it worked pretty well. It got really thick right there because it was a double double pipe cleaner, but that's okay. Still looks okay, and it's still perfectly functional. I had to change my presser foot on my machine, and I don't know where I put it. Oh, here it is. I don't know what yours is called on your machine, but I had to put in my E presser foot, which allowed me to get right up close to that pipe cleaner and get my stitching in right next to it. So right up here it worked pretty well, but when I got up here where I had a curve and a thick pipe cleaner to deal with, it didn't do so great. But still functional. Then I put I turned it right side out after I got the pipe cleaner in there, and then I put the top stitching in. Then on the open end, I turned the edges under, and I used the top stitch to close that seam. I did not run my stitches on anything all the way to the edge. Like right here, you can see I stopped there. 1 inch out, 1 inch out, 1 inch out. So that when I turned it right side out, and I was putting my top stitching on, excuse me, and I sewed this little channel on here, it would create this pocket for the elastic. So, I mean, I've been doing these, just literally running them one after another right through the machine without cutting them apart, which is quite funny. I end up with a big old train of them. Anyway, I'm going to stop now and sew a bunch of these pipe cleaners in. But I hope this was helpful to anyone who wants to try to make masks. I think I have 45 of them here cut out. Some of them child-sized. This is a child's one. It's for my granddaughter. And I think this one's a young child one. Yes, this is an even smaller one. So that, I was really kind of trying out the pattern, but I do know some people that could use these. So one of them's for my granddaughter. And as a matter of fact, that's a fabric I used on a quilt I made for her when she was a baby. So she'll get a mask that matches her quilt. The kid ones, none of those have, except for I think this one. This one might be a kid one. Well, no. This is a kid one, but none of the kid ones have the pipe cleaner in them. I figure the kids really aren't going to care that much. They might not even wear these unless their mothers make them. So, there you go. Or unless somebody in their house gets sick. But I figure if everybody that was a healthcare worker had 2 of these and could wash them, some people even said that some of these cloth ones may be able to be autoclaved, which for people in the healthcare industry, they know that that's a device that heats up things enough to sterilize them. I'm not sure. I don't know. The only way that you'd know is to test it. I don't know if these pipe cleaners, for example, if that stuff is nylon, that little fuzzy stuff, and it would melt in an autoclave. I don't know. I don't know that it would even matter if it did melt, because it could have, it may just add to the thickening of it if the little fuzzies melted. Anyway, I hope this helps anybody who's thinking about making these. If I had it to do over again, I might have started with the pattern that was the rectangle, just because this is a cumbersome pattern with all of these cuts and curves and sewing together and top stitching, and the rectangular one looks way faster and way easier. And right now, with the healthcare system needing them so desperately, that might be the better way to go. Anyway, I hope this helps. I hear my kids making noise in the background. I promise nobody's twisting the legs off of anybody. They're all old enough to behave themselves, but apparently they're not. So anyway, God bless. Oh, that's my dog crying in the background because nobody's down there playing with her. Anyway, God bless. I hope everybody's well and safe. It would just be wonderful if everybody was just staying home making masks and nobody got sick. Anyway, God bless. Bye.